Projection mapping, which is sometimes referred to as video mapping, is a projection technique that turns almost anything in your immediate environment into a screen. Buildings, sculptures, plants, and even people can be dramatically transformed through the use of video footage and animations, projectors, and mapping software. We'll have a look today at the basic tools, skills, and technologies needed to do projection mapping, and then a brief demonstration of how projection mapping works. Hey there, my name's Kelley Bell. I'm a professor of graphic design at University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And today I'm going to show you a little bit about what I do, which is projection mapping. So the first part in any projection mapping project is to create what's called a maquette image. A maquette image is basically a conceptual image that you'll provide the client or your patron or a jury to show them what your project is going to look like once everything is done. So we're going to be using a piece of software called Adobe After Effects. After Effects is generally used in the animation and special effects industry, both for creating animations and then also for compositing special effects into film. That's exactly how we're going to be using this software today. First, we're going to use it to create a number of animations that we're going to map onto these faces, and then we're actually going to use it to distort and composite those animations into here to make a maquette image that we would give to a client. So the word maquette basically is an art history term. It generally refers to a scale model of a larger piece of work, say like a fresco or a large sculpture or a statue, anything that's a scale representation of a larger work. So obviously you can't build something and sketch it really big, so we're going to start small, and that's the same thing that we're going to do here today. You can see here that I've got a picture of my site. So in this case, we're going to be mapping onto these three pedestals here. And I've lit them and they're set to go. Now I've placed my camera roughly where I think that my projector is going to be. The reason that I did that is because, number one, it gives me a sense of where the projector will be once I get on site. And number two, it gives sort of a realistic sense of scale to the piece overall. But since this is a conceptual image, I want to make this look a little bit more realistic and a little bit more closer to what the client can expect for the piece. So the first thing I'm going to lay down is just a shadow layer. So the shadow layer both darkens the background and the environment. It gets rid of sort of any visual detail that might be a distraction, and it also makes our boxes look like they're fully illuminated. So we're ready to start putting our animations onto these blocks. Now, for this project, I've already made a number of small films that we're going to use for this purpose. So for example, here's one. That's a very happy heart. Very, very simple. And you'll see that each one of the faces will have an animation that matches. And you'll see that these are just square. So essentially, these are flat pieces of footage. When we bring them into our maquette image, they're not going to be distorted to these faces here. So let's bring in that happy heart guy. So here he is. You can see that he's just a flat piece of footage sort of placed on top of our maquette image. So we need to distort it to accommodate for perspective and make it look like it's actually conforming to the surface of the cube here. So I'm going to do that by, number one, just sort of dragging this piece of footage down and aligning the corner here, just to sort of provide as a guide to line things up. I'm going to go to special effects. I'm going to go to corner pin. And what corner pin does is allows me to distort this piece of footage to accommodate for perspective. And quite easily, we now have that realistically mapped right onto that surface there. So I've already made these other layers and sort of distorted them to put them into place. So I'm just going to make those visible now so you can have a look. I'm kind of looking at closer detail there. Let's get that guy a little bit closer in. So there's the corner pin again. Just going to drag it down. There's the top of the box there. Let's go down to the bottom. Yeah, that's looking pretty good there. Now I think this top one needs a little adjustment. So that one's called left side. Just go ahead and click on that one. Ooh, yeah, that's way off. Let's bring that in a little bit, like so. Okay. So from this, we've got two things. Number one, we have a maquette image that we can now send to the client or the jury or whomever to get the project approved. And we also have these flat animations that we can render out and use for footage. So what we're going to do is render these animations out, and then we're going to take them into a piece of projection mapping software called MadMapper. And MadMapper is going to allow us to distort our projection so it will look like a three-dimensional surface when everything is put into place. So let's go and do that. So here we are on site. In this case, it's my friend's studio in Baltimore, Maryland. We've got our projector placed correctly. That means that it's at the right distance from our shapes, and all of our surfaces are illuminated fully. So we can do some groovy things like change colors. We can run through the spectrum just by changing the projection light. We can do patterns. We can do leopard skins. We can even do black and white checks. And black and white checks are pretty good to look at because one thing that you'll notice is that the boxes just kind of blend into the background. Now, part of the reason for this is obviously they are not isolated. So one function of mapping software is to isolate the objects that you want to project on. The second is you'll notice that everything just kind of flattens out. We don't really have a sense of three-dimensionality. That's the other thing that MadMapper, the software that we're going to be using, lets you do, is it allows you to distort the animations or the videos that you're bringing in to actually conform to the volume of the shapes you want to project on to create the illusion of depth. So that's going to be the next step in our projection mapping process. So here we are in the mapping software that we're going to use for this project. I've chosen to use a product called MadMapper. It's made by a company called GarageCube. And I find it to be really simple and intuitive to use. There's a lot of other products out there that range from really high-priced products like Lightform that comes with its own sensors and cameras to other products like Heavy M and Resolume. Resolume is a VJ software, but it also can be used for mapping. But there's also open source platforms such as Touch Designer, Splash, and MapMap. So you have a lot of choices. And a good source for finding out about your options is going to the site projectionmappingcentral.com. That's where I learn about a lot of the stuff that's going on and also find a lot of projects that inspire me. So we're going to use MadMapper just because it's what I'm used to. And it is very similar to what we just did in After Effects in terms of the overall process. So you'll see that we've got two windows here. We have one on the left-hand side that shows the footage as it's coming in from the computer. And then on the right, we have a window that shows how the footage is distorting and appearing through the projector. So what I'm going to do is generate a quad. A quad basically is a square of footage that we're going to use to map the first surface of our projection map. Now I'm going to go into a split screen mode so you can see what's happening from the projector view, and you can see that we have a plain black and white grid here that looks very similar to the one that we were looking at originally. So it's flat, it's covering the entire surface, and it's not really mapping to provide that illusion of depth that we're looking for. So this right-hand output window allows us to distort whatever is in the quad and make it conform to the surface of the pedestal in this case. And the process is very similar to what we were doing in After Effects. That's one of the things that I like about this, is that it's very similar to the maquette making process, so it translates pretty easily. Next, what I'm going to do is copy that quad, and I'm going to use it to map the other side of that pedestal. So I do this just because I want them to be proportionally correct. I know that the height of both of those sides is equal, so copying them makes me not have to do as much mapping for the next one. The grid is especially helpful also because it helps me make sure that everything is lining up correctly, that everything is distorting correctly, and that all of my edges are meeting correctly. So there we go. Now I'm going to speed up the process, and you can see how we use MadMapper to essentially map the rest of the pedestals for the projection work. And once I have all of my surfaces mapped, it's very easy to bring in the individual animations that I created in After Effects and replace the generic grid pattern that I made in the quads with the actual animations that I want to map to the surfaces. See? It's that easy. The other thing that's really neat is that you can look at it from any angle and you see that it still reads as a three-dimensional form. So those are the basics of projection mapping. I love working with this art form because it really allows you to do crazy things with your environment. With the right tools and a little bit of practice, there's no limit to the stuff that you can make. So why not give it a try and see what you can do?